Hello everyone, my name is Armia, and today we are doing a BattleTech video. I know, I haven't done that one before. This is a new one for me. I've been doing some SCP, I've been doing a lot of World of Darkness, and I was like, you know what, let's switch it up with another classic. Now, I do know a little bit about BattleTech. I'd say I don't know as much as as I know about World of Darkness, or something like 40k. But I'm also not a complete noob to the setting. So I thought it would be fun to start with the Great Houses of the Inner Sphere, which is a lot of the focus of where BattleTech starts, right? So let's get into it, shall we? Okay, right away, I already have to pause the video. Right away, this is something I love about stuff like BattleTech, like 40k, like World of Darkness, actually, as well. They all have a very distinct aesthetic. BattleTech specifically really likes to lean on that, like, 80s vibe, because, very much so, the series still lives in the 80s. Like, in a lot of ways. From the general vibes to the story to the gameplay. Honestly, like a lot of the mechs are relatively primitive by today's standards. So yeah, and also another thing I need to note is Comstar. Now, some people might not know. What the heck is Comstar? Comstar is the interplanetary and intergalactic communications center. There are technically others. There are some others that do exist, but basically Comstar has a near monopoly on long-range, faster-than-light communication, which is obviously crucial for any interplanetary state. So, Comstar is pretty powerful. They're also religious. At one point in the lore, they go kind of crazy and try to do like a holy war. It's a bit wild. Anyway, you have no choice. BattleTech 101. Great Houses of the Inner Sphere.
Welcome, new mech warriors, to the Inner Sphere, where you can keep whatever money you find so long as you live to payday. For our first lesson, the Great Houses. Slide, please. So the Great Houses are the 6, or for people who can actually calculate projection power on an appreciable strategic scale, the 4 peer states, 1 remnant, and 1 hermit kingdom that make up the Inner Sphere.
Yeah, right away. And Rasalhaque. Rasalhaque! My boys. I love Rasalhaque. They are my favorite faction of the Inner Sphere. Right away, you can tell, obviously, like, there's some stuff going on here. Like, the phone company. Yeah, Comstar controls a bunch of planets in the center of the galaxy. They are incredibly powerful. It is kind of crazy. Which does make sense. Communications is crucial, like I said earlier, to any given empire. I'm sure we'll get into each and every one of these, but I do love seeing the aesthetics of each of them. Like the Draconis Combine and the Lyran Commonwealth look completely different, and I love that.
No, it's not a perfect sphere. Yes, there are things outside of it. Today we're talking about these assholes. These are the Great Houses of the Inner Sphere, and they're all very different in varying ways, but are mostly the same, in that they are all occasionally not very nice to each other. They also possess vast arsenals of planet-killing weapons, and on special occasion will trundle them out for public display. If you want to know why these people are fighting over such vast territory and why they're so committed to erasing portions of their collective industrial base history and civilization, well, it's complicated. My best...
In the very, 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 very short sense, it's technically a civil war. Technically. like, there was a Star Empire once and it broke into pieces in the very, very short and oversimplified way. There's a lot more Talks BattleTech stuff out there, and I'm sure we'll get into it. But I just want to really quickly say I really like the aesthetics of this. The 80s aesthetic is fantastic.
Take on it is a two-parter, and most people find that a bit much. So let this serve as a basic introduction to your career in the world of mech warriors, and a primer on who's most likely to kill you when you inevitably fuck up.
The thing is, who's most likely to kill you is, like, everyone. But yeah.
But firstly, a disclaimer. I am biased. As a mercenary plying his trade in the Inner Sphere, I find concepts such as warfighting ideology largely a position of what you can cover up from the general public. Mainly because, at the end of the day in the Inner Sphere, it's about you and yours, and smoking craters tell no tales. They make a hell of an autocannon. But to better illustrate my point, let's just dive in. This map is from 3067. Maps from after that are somewhat messed up, for a number of reasons. And on an unrelated note, let's just brush this radioactive ash off here, and there we go. 3067. Don't mind the flickering on the screen, I'm told it's mostly harmless. Mostly. Let's begin with the great houses themselves. I'll be moving clockwise as we go, for those of you who understand time, and left-hand feed for people who understand timing.
I do really like the, I really like, so I haven't watched any Tech's videos yet up until this point. They've been recommended to me multiple times, but I haven't ever checked them out. I do like this sort of grizzled veteran mercenary vibe, telling stories of the Inner Sphere in this case. Obviously, in BattleTech, most of the time you play it as a mercenary, but I, personally, find it very interesting to play as... I personally find it very interesting to play as somebody who is actually attached to certain factions. Because that causes you to get involved in all sorts of politicking and backstabbery and all that sort of thing. You know, if you're playing Vampire the Masquerade, you'll be more than familiar with the type of politicking I'm talking about. Just with more mechs. Draconis Combine and House Karita.
Welcome to the wacky, weird world of the Draconis Combine. Welcome to a pervasive class system, and home to the galaxy's own homegrown, no-bullshit, sword-wielding, authoritarian samurai ruling class.
Yep.
Oh yes, this place is literally built off pre-spaceflight Terran Shogunate-era Japan. It's a monolithic, all-encompassing bureaucratic machine run on war and conquest that thinks optimal Christmas dinner is, by tradition, fried chicken. There are
So, a few things there that I just want to mention. The Christmas dinner thing is a real life thing in Japan. It's called KFC for Christmas. Look it up sometime. It's genuinely a tradition to go to KFC for Christmas there at this point. Which is interesting. Just one of those things that's like, okay, sure, why not? And on the other hand, this being a series that is born in the 80s, if you've ever played Cyberpunk, or in this case BattleTech, or any other series that comes out in the 80s, Blade Runner, for example, is very much similar. Japan is always a huge power in those things. Now, why is that? Simple. The Japanese economic miracle. Back in those days, Japan's GDP was growing at such a fast rate that I think, like, they were projected to be a bigger GDP than America by, like, the 2000s or something like that. Something insane like that. Needless to say, that didn't happen, but there was a real fear in American culture back then that Japan would overtake them as the superpower of the 21st century and beyond. And that's why a lot of 80s era stuff features Japan so heavily. Just a little meta thing for you.
Fun collection of ideas. Behold, this is their throne room. Take that in. This isn't just for show. This is their military. These are their uniforms.
Oh my goodness. That's so 80s.
These are their mechs. They fight like this all the time.
And by the way, while the state themselves aren't the greatest, it is very fun to roleplay a samurai mech warrior. I mean, come on. Pulling out a katana with a mech will never not be cool.
Yes, those swords are very real and do brutal work. Alright, so back to the guy in the chair. It is frequently a guy in charge of this. So this guy is called the coordinator. He runs the place. There's very little distinction between the coordinator as a person and the Draconis Combine as a whole. When people refer to the dragon in reference to
That's actually gorgeous art, by the way. I really like this.
Kurita as a house or a nation, it's interchangeable between the two entities. And no, the Draconis Combine doesn't celebrate the godhood of rulership with divine mandate. However, the coordinator's word carries essentially the same weight within their sphere of influence, so I'd not invite trouble, as Kurita tends to bury its enemies deep, headless, and by the million. They have no issues with troubleshooting in government, as trouble should be shot in the Draconis Combine.
I think a good way to sum up the Draconis Combine, as far as I know it, is they are basically like, imagine the Yakuza running like an actual state, complete with like the whole Bushido thing. It gets interesting, it gets weird.
And if there is anything to fear from these guys, it's that they believe in a manifest destiny which involves House Kurita controlling everything. The Draconis Combine started as an agreement between two worlds, which was then fed war and conquest through House Kurita's leadership. Kurita has had total control since the beginning, aside from that one cadet branch that one time in the family who was wiped out long ago. As far as how this thing runs, well, the 5 pillars represent the Draconis Combine.
Right.
The pillar of gold is the government. The pillar of steel is the military. The pillar of teak is the people. The pillar of ivory is religion, philosophy, zen, and all that crap. And then there's jade, the economy. These 5 pillars of state philosophy are represented in the ministries of state organized through them.
I like the coordinator fried chicken.
For instance, the pillar of steel encompasses the Ministry of War, the Department of Indoctrination, the Bureau of Substitution, the Assembly of the Grand Inquisitor, the Admiralty, the Physician Staff of the Dragon, and various minor administration authorities.
It's definitely... You definitely get the vibe of the Draconis Combine just from the names that they are being pointed to, right? Like Grand Inquisitor. You already know what they're about. Not a lot of people like the Draconis Combine, and I can't blame them for that because, well, they aren't exactly nice people, but they are very interesting as a faction. Also, I just want to have this said, BattleTech has a lot of its origins in stuff like Gundam and Macross, and having a big Japanese faction just makes sense for that sort of thing. Mechs, after all, are huge in Japan. They are the mech country, so I think it's only sensible to have some kind of faction representing Japan. Though personally, while I don't mind the whole Shogun-era Japan thing and like the whole Bushido stuff, personally, I would have found it much more interesting to see like modern Japan represented on the galactic scale, maybe with like a more warlike approach to the world. I think that could have been very interesting as well. Not that this is bad, though.
Speaking of authorities, Draconis Combine bureaucracy tends to be impenetrable to outsiders, impossible to reason with, and largely maintains the status quo. Actual decisions are typically made by people with significant military rank, in the form of military governors appointed to oversee civilian authorities. When in doubt, the decision maker is typically the one with the sword. And if you want to see that sword up close and real fast, you only need to fail to take its bearer seriously, or merely disrespect their presence. Also, they had this whole death to mercenaries thing for a while. Not my favorite government to work with. Then again, they rarely need mercenaries ever because the constant fighting and insanity of the samurai class means they're pretty much ready to throw down whenever. If they lack a cause, they'll find one quick. The leaders of the Draconis military are often peerless warlords, equally at home in local shogunal politics or on the battlefields of their neighbors. The Draconis Combine is the state that war built, maintained by Bushido, psychotic warriors, and a shitload of weapons.
It's also interesting where, like, earlier, the industrial capacity was the thing that was mentioned first. And BattleTech is all about industry when we really come down to it. It's all about controlling industry, spreading your industry, like making sure you take from your enemies that what they need to build the mechs, etc. And building them yourself, of course. Most smaller states can't really build mechs in most of the BattleTech timeline. While they absolutely, like, obviously, the inner sphere states, the really big ones, can. Even during the like, rougher periods. But all the same, they, just the entire sense of very... I feel like BattleTech is a factory, if that makes any sense. I don't know if I'm making sense today. I'm kind of sleepy. Sorry about that. But hey, I hope you're enjoying it all the same.
Kurita forces in your backyard is frequently the precursor to speaking Japanese in your near future, whether you want to or not.
Ah, the Sunny Boys. Federated Suns.
Next door is ruled by House Davion, the so-called good kid of the successor houses. The noble one. The one that likes autocannons a lot. That's these guys. Technically, the state is the Federated Suns, and they're another fun monarchy. House Davion is descended from English and French nobility, operating as constitutionally bound monarchs, and has been, since ever, trying to reinforce their position as champions of liberty and personal freedom at every annoying turn. Because of this, most people think House Davion, and by extension, the Federated Suns, are self-righteous assholes.
Which they are. Like, they really are. They often think just like, I'm the good guy, so I should be... I'm the main character, sort of thing. They tend to be very main character-y, just in a lot of stuff. If you ever played the BattleTech CRPG, which I do recommend, by the way, if you're ever interested in BattleTech, you do run into some of them. Not that many, but a few.
They are not wrong. Mostly. But see, the story is a bit funny on that. Originally, the Federated Suns was a federation. In time, the founding polities chose delegates to form a high council who would, among themselves, elect a president to lead them. But the political machinations of the Davion family were all about having a monarchy, so they pushed the presidency into that, and since then, the Davion family has ruled. Which is really good for them. Mostly good for the Federated Suns, and has worked out for the most part. However, Davions being Davions, one had to rule them all. So there was an early Davion civil war. The 5 marches had to decide for themselves who would be the first prince, and sharing was, apparently, not a serious consideration at any point.
Interesting. So the Draconis March and the Capellan... So this is something I don't actually know that much about. So... from what I'm seeing here, I assume the Draconis March ended up joining the Draconians, while the Capellan March ended up joining the Capellans. Huh. That explains why the Federated Suns are often like, oh, we're just here liberating this planet. Also, Kirbyville.
And the winner of that first early Davion Civil War, Alexander Davion, went on to pass more legislation than any of his predecessors because he had total military support. Turns out you can make people vote how you want with a bayonet. However, the story doesn't get any worse really for some time at least. To their credit, House Davion was not a despot. They encouraged then and still champion free speech, individual liberties, and personal freedom. But in the end, it is a monarchy. Considering the mostly
Relatively speaking, I think if you're gonna live anywhere in the Inner Sphere, the Federated Suns are not the worst place to live.
Official ruling arrangement, some will label Davion a father knows best state, which has many times but not always been justified in its actions. As such, it is seen as one of the more stable houses on account of broad public support. I will admit this, though they can be miserably righteous and annoying, they're frequently not evil, just smug. And yes, that is just as bad. The armed forces of the Federated Suns have historically been one of the most professional militaries in the Inner Sphere, originally formed from peacekeepers and always kept as modern as state industries could allow. These guys even developed the predecessors to the Warhammer on their own dime in the earliest years of battle mechs. Even when they're wrong, they're almost right. Davion may not pay you well, but they won't bury you for no reason.
That is the nice thing about working for Davion for sure, that they, like he says, they don't pay well, but they are relatively reliable, and generally, they do take care of their employees. Relatively. Because if you're a mercenary, don't expect too much. Don't expect free healthcare.
Mostly.
Oh boy. These guys. Liao. Everybody's favorite faction. All the BattleTech fans in the comments, you can tell me why you love Liao so much, right? God, they are just the best.
Next door are these guys. I don't like them as much for a number of reasons. The Capellan Confederation is the youngest kid on the block as successor states go. It's a socialistic police state that has almost but not always been under the control of one family, House Liao. The head of the state is the Chancellor, who is, in the Capellan Confederation, one nod away from making you disappear. To say that it is a police state is not an act of hyperbole, but substantiated fact. However, it wasn't always so. What started as a collection of states uniting for common defense and well-being slowly grew over hundreds of years through successive generations of philosophy and leadership from one house into an autocratic state with a centrally controlled economy.
Really quickly, I just want to mention this. Notice, Capella itself is not the capital of the Capellan Confederation. I wonder why that is. I'll have to look that up sometime, because I'm sure there's an interesting story there.
One house into an autocratic state with a centrally controlled economy. Some would say this is a functional dictatorship, but dictators tend toward having some sort of functional agenda or understanding of strategic power. But in truth, there's actually three forces that run this place, at least in theory. They are the Chancellor, the Prefectorate, and the House of Scions. The Chancellor is the CIC of the Armed Forces, Special Forces, and the face of the state in matters of foreign policy. The Chancellor can also make decrees and legislative changes at will. It's a powerful position, to say the least, and has nearly always been a lifetime appointment for House Liao. The Prefectorate is the body of state regional entities and greater nobility. The House of Scions isn't, mostly. Needless to say, the Chancellor seems to get his or her way more often than not. But the other two governmental branches will act to frustrate or block particular agendas. What's interesting about the Capellan Confederation is that its citizens, or rather I should say resident aliens born there, are not citizens. Not yet, anyways.
Oh?
In fact, in the Confederation, citizenship must be earned, and the state is the sole measure of that esteem. Children are legally, in every way, wards of the state under limited provisional supervision granted by the government to their parents or other assigned legal guardians.
Yikes, that is, that is massively uncomfortable, goodness gracious.
At age 15, each child is thoroughly examined by the government to see if they have a proven commitment to the state. Those who are deemed worthy gain citizenship. Those who are not are given a grace period for a second evaluation, but failure to measure up as a citizen for any reason results in becoming a non-citizen, which are frequently referred to as state servitors. By the Succession Wars, this non-citizen class had become an enormous part of the population. A population that, I must state, had no rights and was legally state property. This was reversed in 3052 when Sun Tzu Liao became chancellor and abolished servitor slavery. Not all.
Good on him for abolishing that, but also Jesus. So I knew they were bad guys. I didn't actually know about the non-citizenship thing. That is wild, actually. That is actually wild.
Capellan chancellors are assholes. Most, though, well, the record speaks for itself. The military of the Confederation Armed Forces have traditionally been the underdog, but have never shied away from a fight. They frequently are pushed into doing far too much with far too little, and on top of it have to face the catastrophic political and military meddling of a chancellor who may or may not understand the difference between entertainment and war.
There's also a very interesting bit for mercenaries. House Liao tends to pay really well, for the simple reason that oftentimes mercenaries will be kind of the only reason they survive on a given planet, because if House Davian drops, like, if House Davian really commits to it, they can just crush Capella, like, in a 1v1 sort of fight, right? Obviously there's other factors at play there, but, you know, hear me out. Liao often will need to lean a little bit more on mercenaries because of that. They are also, very interestingly, they do a lot of improvisation with their technology. I believe these guys really like rockets, for example. They put like massive rocket pods on light mechs and just blast people with them. It's pretty fun. Like, while the state themselves aren't the greatest, the gameplay aspects of them are very interesting and pretty fun to play around with.
The fact that Capellan State has not been conquered outright speaks volumes to the abilities of the CCAF, who have demonstrated battlefield insanity as a doctrine for nearly 8 centuries. The Capellan economy is centrally planned and is designed on the principle that sufficient planning can overcome any hardship. This has produced mixed results. The Confederation always endures, but at what cost?
What cost indeed? House Marek.
Next door.
Odeon, get me my fluffy pillow.
Sorry. Yu-Gi-Oh! Abridged took over there for a second.
Is the Free Worlds League. I don't say House Marek because, well, it's complicated. Also, their history isn't terrible as some make it out to be. Yes, the greatest threat to Americ is Americ, but glory to Merrick. But it wasn't always so. The Free Worlds League was actually formed before the Terran hegemony, born out of the early Terran Alliance's colonial struggles and then collapse as an early power. Your homeworld falling apart in early colonization was, well, somewhat on the catastrophic end of things. So nations which weathered that catastrophe learned self-reliance. The Free Worlds League was originally an agreement between 3 existing nations, the Rasalhaque Republic, the Regulan Principality, and the Federation of Oriente. Amazingly enough, the founders of the League owe most of their success to a guy named George Humphreys, who was the negotiator between the 3 nations, and was honored as the first Speaker of Parliament for 5 damn sessions.
A very Bismarck-esque figure, I imagine.
They didn't throw their negotiator away when they came together as a nation. They threw nobody under the bus.
Never mind.
Instead,
not a very Bismarck-esque figure then.
They championed him. That is righteous. So how'd it go down? You see, of the 3 nations, Merrick was on top locally, and Merrick didn't like the idea of a union at all, not at first. He thought it wouldn't work. Working with others seemed like a bad idea, in fact, considering the state of galactic affairs, but Humphreys wore him down, like a good friend does, and the only reason I bring this up is because what wore him down wasn't politics. It wasn't an appeal to power or glory or riches or conquest or the history books. It was in fact nerd shit. See, Detlev Merrick collected historic awards and trophies. Raju Salaj, Prince of Regulus, collected miniatures, figurines mainly, and books and paintings and the like. And these two guys nerding out about their neat stuff they liked and had collected contributed as much toward the founding of the Free Worlds League as anything else.
Okay, that is really fun. And weirdly realistic in a way, because sometimes petty stuff like that does really impact the world. I mean, World War I was basically a family feud, so yeah, that is really funny. Oh my goodness.
Ostensibly, the Free Worlds League is a federal republic, with each province granted a grand measure of self-rule and sovereignty, and as you'd expect, the Free Worlds League is a complex creature politically speaking. The Parliament is technically a supreme federal and legislative authority, but there's some caveats to that. For one, membership of the Parliament was, for a time, determined by the amount of taxes paid into the Treasury. And then there's the self-rule problem. All that self-rule means you have all sorts of people in Parliament. Some nations could be dictatorships, others a theocracy, others a democracy, and yet all under one flag. Naturally, this causes some problems. It's why, for the most part, the Free Worlds League, through its history, has operated in a near-permanent state of martial law under the Captain General, who is frequently, but not always, a Merrick. Historically, the power of the Parliament has waned with every major conflict, crisis, or state of emergency, whereas the power of the Captain General has increased.
A little bit like the Roman Republic, where in most, dramatic moments, they would assign a dictator for a period, and then that dictator would hand power back. Then obviously, over time, the Republic kind of weakened. Also, that's an interesting position for your cannons there, bud.
That's right. The Free Worlds League drops their issues at Merrick's welcome mat, rings the doorbell, and runs the fuck home. I don't envy that job. Originally intended for military matters on behest of Parliament, 8 centuries of emergency powers later, the Captain General stands as first among equals, and is more or less House Merrick's personal lordship of the Free Worlds League, with all of the hazards that entails. The Free Worlds League has defined its economic niche through innovative technologies and free trade, which I feel is a response engineered in opposition to the then crumbling Terran Alliance's blanket of tariffs and protective customs laws. The laissez-faire approach to the free world's economic principles has made more friends than enemies. However, poor risk management analysis has caused problems.
So that makes a lot of sense, I think, in general, with the logic of, hey, we have an alliance of... It's kind of a little bit European Union in that sense, where, like, you have a bunch of different states, right, that all work together for a common goal, but are constantly bickering as well. Which might actually make this my favorite faction, just because I really enjoy the, sort of, the freedom of the states, but then also, like, the... sort of a constant bickering. I don't know, I think that's interesting. I think it's more interesting than, like, we have one leader and no conflicts beneath us.
For instance, after conquering the magistracy of Canopus during the Reunification War, the Free Worlds League invested oceans of currency, industry, and effort into rebuilding the Canopan economy. Canopus returned the favor by outcompeting and underbidding the Free Worlds League economy in the region by mostly using principally cheaper labor and lots of industry they didn't have to pay to build. This resulted in a 10-year economic recession for the entire Free Worlds League.
Jesus Christ. Yeah, not the best investment, but the Canopians are very interesting, by the way. I might have to see if there's like a video on the periphery states as well, because to me, the inner sphere is cool, but the periphery is where it's really at. It's where I really get interested.
No good deed goes unpunished, since they've learned quite a bit, and have managed their economic affairs with care to guard against the systemic mayhem and shock as caused by other states' good intentions or not. Culturally, the Free Worlds League is a mix. In fact, it is probably the most diverse state there is in the Inner Sphere. The principal language is mostly a derivative of Star League English, but on any given world you might hear Czech, Arabic, or Urdu. With the sheer number of cultures and political systems present in the Free Worlds League, it must be said that if there was anything that unified them, it was not a merit, but more an ideology. And that's entrepreneurship, a belief in the free market, and the idea that anybody could make it if they tried. It was from the prosperity of the Star League that this philosophy grew, I feel. The succession wars didn't dampen their spirits either. It merely made them appreciate what they had, and encouraged them to continue fighting for it. And
I like that a lot, honestly. I actually never really looked that much into House Marek, so this is kind of setting them to me, I won't lie.
maybe each other from time to time, because hey, glory to Marek.
Glory to Marek, baby.
Next door is the one people
Everybody's favorite house, everybody's favorite Scoutlands.
make fun of, and for some of the right reasons. Welcome to the Lyran Commonwealth. First of all, few call it that unless they're declaring war or arranging marriage, which if I'm
I love that they have mechs in the throne room. That's so extra.
frank might be the same thing in the same afternoon. So welcome to the House of Steiner. The Steiners are the ruling family and have been since virtually ever. They were founded as a merchant and industrialist conglomerate. They never stopped being exactly that. They celebrate their vast wealth by having far too many nobles, far too many noble titles, and historically largely incompetent generals. Save for the occasional flash in the pan, that is. However, if they're strategically incompetent to the point that the concept of their scouting parties operating vastly excessive tonnage, even in modest probing actions, memes based more on truth than you think, then how do they survive, you ask? Well, money and industry, friends. Money and industry.
Yeah, there's the sheer amount of stuff they can put out. Like, if you have a planet that can produce, I'm just gonna say a number out there, right? If you have a planet that can produce 10,000 mechs and your opponent has like 5, you know, strategy doesn't really matter once the numbers get big enough.
House Steiner's backing is the industrial base and every bank that invested in it. They are the military-industrial complex. There are many good reasons they can afford to dump truck weapons into a situation, operational or not, piloted or not, and then continue to do so until the enemy leaves. While not stupendously famous for warfighting leadership or tactical brilliance, House Steiner can and will bury you with its vast assembly lines led by pretend generals until you give up or they get bored.
Also, they pay very well.
Every tragic comedy of their strategic planning is mostly covered by the sheer power of their pervasive economy and vast military industry. In its early days, the Lyran Commonwealth was headed by 9 archons as patterned off ancient Athens of Terra, because early post-Terran colonies were like that, very idyllic. Then one guy deposed the other 8, decided to establish the Estates General to run the show, and finally hammer out some agreements on what rights meant. And it's kind of worked out. Technically, the Archon of the Lyran Commonwealth is an absolute ruler, commander-in-chief of all military forces, and can unilaterally make most governmental decisions with a modest nod. They run the show. They even hold the right to grant and remove noble titles in perpetuity.
Which is a pretty big deal in a state that runs on nobility.
Titles which hold significant power. So they're a ruthless autocrat, right? Not really. Most archons of House Steiner, aside from a few notable assholes who need extensive covering in what I will likely label a historical diss track, are mostly okay people. They delegate most decisions to the bureaucracy, the councils of state, appointed advisors, and the Estates General, and they typically just keep their heads down, or just go to the Solaris thing. Right.
Also, I just have to say, I know this music isn't originally from Roller Coaster Tycoon, but Roller Coaster Tycoon has broken me in that sense, because I can only hear the Roller Coaster Tycoon noises in the background.
Right. The Solaris thing. So there's a bullseye in the Inner Sphere in the murder for entertainment business, and it's right here. Solaris 7. This is pretty much Steiner in a nutshell. But I'm not an expert in these matters, so I'll turn it over to a local. He can sum it up better. Mr. Fisher, take it away.
Solaris 7 is the only place where you can pay money to watch two strangers beat each other to death, while also enjoying a corn dog.
Duncan, that's not true. Canopus exists. Last I went, and a very good Outback.
Okay. That is such a good line. That's not true. Canopus exists.
I think Canopus banned trans fats, my dude. I've only ever seen funnel cake. Oh, and they do a lot of food on a stick. Saves napkins, less to clean up. Stick food is really the way of the future.
As an aside, this is something, since we're talking about food, food is maybe the best world-building tool. Figuring out what your people eat from a day-to-day basis impacts everything. The entire culture changes based on food, because everyone, from low to high, needs to eat. And like, if your citizens are eating gruel every day, or they're eating, you know, like lobster and caviar, that informs a lot about your society. And it's very easy to do. Like, you could literally just throw it into a sentence and people will get it. That's why, if you are ever trying to world build anything, please figure out the food.
I wish we'd thought of it first. Sticks truly are the yardstick of food.
Right.
I'm Duncan Fisher. I stand by this statement. Sticks are the future. Mark my words.
Duncan, this is costing me a fortune.
Oh, right. HPG bills. So, Solaris 7.
Really quickly, for those who don't know what an HPG is how you, like, communicate interstellarly. Stellarly. There we go, that's a word. And most of them are owned by Comstar, like I've mentioned before. There are some independent ones, but they tend to get attacked by Comstar.
Murder is more or less very legal, so long as you do it in the box on TV, and everyone has a really great time. In fact, it's fantastic. There's explosions and music, and I'm there. Every night, on every screen. I tell you all the things I think you need to hear, and most of them are very accurate. Very, very accurate. Anyways, this is Duncan Fisher signing off. And this appearance cost Professor Tex 1,485 C-bills.
Thank you, Duncan. Steiner space is a complex thing. Not good, not evil, just very big. In fact, I think that the Lyran Commonwealth is much like a cosmic horror. Some giant, blind, idiot god. Just waiting there, happily making money and strudel. Singing merrily to itself. Until someone comes over and flips the table. And then it becomes very, very upset.
That is a very cool way of putting it. Also very fitting that they made them an atlas. Honestly, I kind of love it. Is it my favorite, boys? Yeah!
Anyways, moving to our right, because space has that, we have to talk about this strip of the inner sphere that's been nothing but hell. We're not talking about these a-holes here, because they're not from here, or rather, not recently. These are the clans, and for those uninitiated, they're a strange, deep space civilization of state-mandated, eugenics program, warrior caste, combat cult weirdos. Even by our standards, they're very weird.
You dare refuse my pachal?
They also got completely wrecked by the phone company. It was a pretty okay time. For us, that is. So, here's what remains of the somewhat free Rasalhaque Republic. So these guys were a thing, briefly, until these guys decided they shouldn't be. Because they were between these guys and Terra, which is controlled.
This is why I don't like the clans. Heck you clans. Let my Rasalhagians live.
By the phone company, who wasn't cool with these guys taking a bite out of everything on their way to the telecoms HQ for very odd, strangely specific, quasi-spiritual reasons, which were very different strangely specific, quasi-spiritual reasons, the phone company decided to murder them.
Oh yeah, Comstar is a religion. I did mention that earlier, but that is still so weird.
Guys, as it turns out, you can make people show up to an ambush by just asking them. Remember, be kind, it pays dividends. Before that unpleasantness, Rasalhaque was a state cut from the space between House Kurita over here and House Steiner. These Kuritan buffer worlds were, before Kurita came along, an independently free principality of mostly culturally Scandinavian colonists. This small state was then overrun by House Kurita, who had to pry the worlds from them after 30 years of guerrilla warfare. They didn't go quietly. They were always a somewhat fiercely independent border region who resisted assimilation into the Draconis Combine. Over time, and some phone company intervention, Theodore Kurita was convinced of the benefits of creating a buffer zone between the houses of Steiner and Kurita by granting Rasalhaque independence. Some of Kurita's guys were so mad at this that they resisted the government, and Kurita had to fight what was called the Ronin War. After Old Man Kurita gave his rowdy warriors the...
Yeah, the Ronin War is a whole mess, but yeah, it is. It's kind of crazy to think about that, because resisting the government in the Kuritan, space is not something you do, you know? So the fact that this happened was kind of a big deal.
Rasalhaque became essentially a neutral buffer between the two superpowers of House Kurita and House Steiner. They were independent for almost 2 decades before these assholes came in, and in the end, they weren't anymore.
I think, as far as I'm aware, Rasalhaque is quite popular amongst, BattleTech fans, and I get it, right? They're an underdog. Everybody loves an underdog. But I do find it unfortunate that they were in the way of the clans, because, Rasalhaque is cool.
This much of them survived as a rump state under the custodianship of Comstar until 3070, when Clan Ghostbear more or less took them in. Because Ghostbear is of a similar cultural background and understands the importance of family. Good people mostly. Kinda clingy though. For the record, Rasalhaque was not a paper dragon. They collapsed only after fighting bravely in the face of overwhelming odds. They gave the clanners a hard fight on every world, and in the deep black between stars. It was a Rasalhaque pilot who kamikazed the Okan's warship and stopped the invasion for a year.
As an aside, I would love to see... I think that would make for a really good mech warrior campaign, where you are a Rasalhagian mech warrior having to defend a planet. The entire campaign just takes place on one planet, one defense, maybe even just one city, and you're just trying to defend that city. That would be a genuinely good story, I feel like. Because while the mercenary thing is really cool in BattleTech, like I said earlier, sometimes it's really cool to stand for a faction. And the Rasalhagians are just really likable. They're underdogs. They are generally, as far as I'm aware, pretty democratic. They just want to be left alone most of the time. So giving them an overwhelming enemy to fight is inherently interesting, right? So I don't know. I'd love to see that actually. Just a story of a single city defense. That's it.
Rasalhaque is like that. They'll smile all day, but fuck around and the Viking comes out, and it doesn't stop until you or they are very, very dead.
Accurate.
Next up, I have to talk about this. This was once the cradle of humanity, but it's been a hotbed of a lot of historical issues. Originally, the first circuit of what was called SL Comnet was laid out in this chunk of space once called the Hegemony. Then, there was this guy named Jerome Blake, and as fate would have it, he'd be the last employee of SL Comnet. But
what? Why? Hold on.
Fate would have it. Then, there was this guy named Jerome Blake.
Blake be praised.exe activated.
As fate would have it, he'd be the last employee of SL Comnet. But some assholes in time would think that everything that poured out of his goddamn mouth was the word of...
That's fantastic.
Right, so I guess next time I have to talk about the periphery, then the deep periphery. Great. Goat, play me out. Team, show these people how we pay our bills. See you next time. Stay safe.
All right.
Oh, far away from the light of terror, the remnants of another era. Join the crew, grab a brew. It's a damn periphery.
Lovely, 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 lovely stuff. Well, there you go. Well, that was pretty fun, I would say. I did like taking a look at BattleTech. Not a setting I know quite as much about as World of Darkness, but I hope my commentary was interesting nonetheless. And, well, with that, a very special thank you to my very important planet Aku, and Tato, Allendog, Vreed, Any Cute Puppy, and Alex the DM over on Ko-Fi for your support. If you want to join them, the links are down below. If you want to become a member, support the channel, you can see yourself scrolling in the back there. Thank you very much for watching, and have a lovely rest of your day. Bye-bye!